On today's video, we're going to talk about driving styles. Two kinds of driving styles, drive and momentum. More on that when we come back. Welcome back. And on this video, we're going to talk about driving styles, drive versus momentum. But before we get started, let's talk about subscribing, liking, and sharing. You doing your part to help me grow this channel. I appreciate you guys. We're almost to the 4,000 mark. We're shooting for that before we go to Boone in September. So help us reach our goals. And again, thank you guys for all you do. Before we get into the driving style, let's talk about how we got where we're at. How did we learn, how to drive? How do we learn, period? How do we learn to fix problems on our race cars? Okay, step one would be unknowing, not knowing that we have a problem. That's where I feel like there's a lot of racers in today's world that they're going and participating in an event, but they're not really growing as a racer. They're not improving on what they're doing. They're just trying to do it better, but they don't really know what to fix. Wouldn't be any different if you was doing videos on YouTube or running a business. Sometimes these things run us. And like a driver, he goes to the racetrack and the driving runs him. So the unknown, step two would be knowing that you have a problem, okay, or that you can do it better. So step three would be understanding. Find the problem and fix the problem. That's what I always tell you guys. Find the problem, fix the problem when it's on your race car. But in your driving style, there's, different driving styles. We just go out and react to what's happening on the track or what's happening in front of us, and we need to go out with a game plan. So, find the problem, fix the problem, and that's where we get today. There's more than just two driving styles, but drive and momentum are going to be what we discuss. Now, there's tracks that limit what we can do. There's driving styles that may be better than, or may be better for you. Okay, so if something is working and you're winning races, go with it. Definitely go with it. But if you're just going out and you're kind of showing up and you're turning laps, then we need to figure out a better thing for you. So let's first understand a little bit about the racetracks, okay? Because a racetrack can dictate whether we're going to have drive in our car or we're going to have momentum, okay? So we often use this thing called a 300 square. It's a 300 foot across and a 300 foot straightaway. And I'm going to show you two tracks, 81 Speedway and Tri-States in Illinois. My confusion is because there's so many Tri-States that it can often be confused with the one in Arkansas or the one in St. Louis. But this one's in the lower Indiana. It's in Indiana, I'm sorry. In the lower part of Indiana. And it is a very tight little racetrack. But let's look at Wichita here, 81 Speedway. This is, I thought was a perfect example of a 300 square, but it's not. It's about 300 foot across, and it's about 450 foot long. So the straightaways are a little long. So on that type of track, you can be a little tight on entry. But that's one of the things you need to know about your racetracks. The other one's Tri-State, and as you see here, Tri-State is about 200 feet across and about 300, I think it was 300 or 400 foot long. But as you see, Tri-State is a very stop and go racetrack. So momentum's not going to work here. It's definitely a drive track, and it has to be driven than what we're talking about in this video. So that is a track that requires a certain kind of driving style. Okay, but if you was going to drive Wichita, you could drive it either as drive or momentum. Okay, so let's break it down a little further. The corner from entry to exit is about 600 feet long if you go the arc of the racetrack. The racetrack, 300 foot across, should have a 150 foot radius, but no tracks really do. They have more of 120 foot, so they're flat across the center. This is an advantage to us. It is an advantage in getting around the corner, but understand, just so you understand, that it's not a perfect arc. Many racetracks are very flat across the center, okay, which might tend to lead us to different types of driving styles, but they are flat. Breaking that corner down into two arcs, entry arc and an exit arc. This is something that I'm going to try to work some graphics up on in the future, and so maybe you understand. So you need to understand, is my entry speed good? Is my exit speed good? Is my entry arc too big or too small? Okay, this will dictate. The racetrack could also dictate maybe it would be better to have a smaller entry. Some places like, what did it say, West Plains, Missouri, but that's not correct. Some of the racetracks in Florida are very high-speed entries, like in turn 3. And it causes to have a big arc on entry. So this big arc entry, so look at it like this. The faster entry is, the bigger the arc. The slower entry is, the smaller the arc. The bigger the arc is on entry, the faster the speed can be. The smaller the arc on entry, the slower the speed should be. So if a slower arc would be a tighter arc. So if you have a big swooping corner, then you can carry speed on entry, but understand it is going to affect your exit speed. So if you see, guys will say, oh, I'm going to drive it in all the way to the center. Okay, well, that's fine because you have a big entry speed, but this causes you to have a slower exit speed, okay? So entry, exit, the two arcs that create the corner, understanding those two arcs, and like I said, I'll try to do a little more graphics on that in the future, but understanding those two arcs and how you're carrying your speed in them two arcs is very crucial to the outcome of your corner, okay? So we're going to start with the two types of driving, drive and momentum. And we're going to look at drive first. So we'll put that slide up and we'll look at drive. Okay, how to make drive. Often I tell people, if you want to drive, the easiest thing to do, just slow down. Drive is acceleration. Drive means that we have to accelerate out of the corner. So we have to, if we go from 45 to 80, that's drive. If we go from 60 to 80, that's not drive, that's momentum. And because we don't have that drive, it doesn't put us back in the seat. So if you want to make drive, slow down. You're not going to go through the corner at 60 miles an hour and have acceleration speed off. So if this is something that you are doing and you feel like that you lack drive, but you're carrying good speed, well, you're never going to have drive. So if you want drive, slow down. That's how you make drive. But let's look at drive coming down the straightaway. A lot of times drive means that we drive. We have our corner broken up here. 12 o'clock center, 3 o'clock to the right, 9 o'clock to the left. Okay, 1, 2, 3 o'clock. So we have sector 1, which takes us to 1 o'clock, and technically we're going to enter or drive it deep into the corner. So we're going to get into the corner between 1 and 1:30 in the corner. And this is where our maximum braking is going to occur. So we drove in deeper. Some guys like to drive it in even deeper, but we drove in deep. We got our foot on the brake. We're carrying speed, and the car at this point is really desirable. Guys say, oh yeah, my car's really good on entry. and then they'll go back and tell me the problems they're having, which means their car is not that good on entry. But they'll say, yeah, my car's really good on entry until just past 1 o'clock part of the corner where I take my foot off the brake and I push the nose, the car goes into a four-wheel drift or the car becomes really tight. Okay, these are two things that happen because we drove in under such speed. We tried to make a really big arc getting into the corner, but we couldn't turn that arc. So we had to slow down to a turnable speed. Okay, this is true in every car. Your car has turn in it. Turn based on spring rates, ride height, rebound, and left rear bite, and general setup. Okay, so if I'm over exceeding my car's ability to turn on entry, I've overdriven the car. And I'm going to have to apply a lot of brake to get the car down to a speed that the car can turn. Okay, so we often hit the racetrack, got our foot on the brake. The car's actually got a little bit of turnability to it because we got front wheel load in it due to the braking. So we're really good into that point, but when we let off the gas, our car goes completely away. We lost our nose, the nose come up, the rear come down, the load come off the front tires. The car often goes into a four-wheel drift that's next followed up by a tight condition. So if you do this right and there's moisture, you eliminate those steps. But as the track starts to slick off, you start having more issues between 1 o'clock and 12 o'clock or in sector 2. These issues cause you to have to double brake or double throttle, and in some cases snap the car loose, or basically you're trying to turn the car on the throttle. Okay, this will get you through the center of the corner. Okay, but two reasons that you lost the nose of the car is because the left side weight has diminished back to the left and the rear steering of the car went out. So now the rear tires are really pointing in a different direction or in a different arc than the front tires. So when you pick the gas up, it kind of pulls the front tires in alignment with the rear and it has you headed off towards the wall. And this is when you snap it loose. So let's back up a little bit. Somewhere in here, we are going to transfer our left side weight. And because we're driving in so deep into the corner, we probably need to have a little lower left side weight because when it does transfer, we need to be back to the throttle. Okay, but the problem is we got to have that braking zone somewhere in there between 1230 and 130 to get the car slowed down because we're carrying too much speed. And during that braking zone, we often lose our left side weight and our rear steer. So that is the problem with drive on a normal size 300-foot square type racetrack. Sometimes you'll see a quarter-mile track where it has a good corner but has short straightaways, okay? So you can still momentum them corners. I think you can momentum Boone. I don't think you have to drive Boone, Iowa the way you drive Boone, Iowa. But sometimes if you try to drive it with momentum, you're just going to get plowed by the guy that's slide jobbing. So you're going to have to be able, to maneuver very well. But we're to the center of the corner. We've accelerated or freed the car up with the tires, and now we're coasting, or we're kind of waiting on the car. We're trying to get the right rear to scotch up a little bit. We may have a little wheel spin going. And we finally get the car to look down the straightaway, and we may be 11, 10:30 in the corner, but then we start accelerating. This is where acceleration has to come in. So if we can get the car to hook up and everything goes well, we'll accelerate out of the corner onto the straightaway, and we'll make the straightaway longer by driving deep into the next corner and starting that process all over again. Okay, the problem with drive is it requires moisture. If you're going to be on a tri-state type racetrack, and you have to drive it to the center and you have to diamond the corner, that's another driving style that we're not discussing here, but it's a very good one. And it's track induced. So a quick overview, if you're on the drive program, where you're going to drive the car into the corner. You're going to drive it in deep. You want to accelerate off, this is what we've been taught for our whole entire life of driving. Nobody ever taught us how to drive. They threw us in a car and we started turning laps. That's how 90% of the old timers learn. Today, we might be on a second generation or third generation drivers where they're getting good advice from their dad and maybe not listening too well, but they're getting good advice from their dad or their uncle or their brother or somebody that's already driven, and they give them pointers on how to drive. And if it matches their driving style, then it works very well. But the problem is they're creating a driving style and they're trying to adapt your advice, and it's not working because they're not changing. Okay, we have to change to adapt to the driving style. So it takes practice, it takes laps. Whether you're on drive or you're on momentum, it's going to take practice. And we'll discuss that a little more later. But now let's talk a little bit about momentum. So as you see on this chart, momentum is going to start braking on the straightaway. We're going to brake on the straightaway, the very end of the straightaway before we get to 3 o'clock. We're going to start our braking zone where that third car is there right before 3 o'clock. When we get to about 2:30 in the corner, we're going to release the brake, put the car back on the bars, turn the car into the corner. Actually, we're going to turn the car in, put it back on the bars, and we're going to accelerate through the corner, building acceleration all the way through the corner. To make sure this happens, we got to have free roll steer, okay? We probably need a higher left side weight so it transfers a little later in that 12:30 to 11:30 part of the corner, or even sector 2, 1 to 11. That's where it needs to transfer, okay? Get the car back up on the bars, get it rotating, get the weight to transfer. That'll keep the rear steer in it. The acceleration will keep the rear steer in it. We'll bring the car on out the corner. So by the time we get to 10 o'clock, we got 2 cars sitting there, one on momentum at 60 miles an hour, one on drive at 45 miles an hour. And the guy with drive goes, man, I wished I had as much drive as he does. Well, he doesn't have a lot of drive, he has a lot of speed. And his speed was created because of what he did back in early sector 1 or 2:30 in the corner. He got on the gas early in the corner. His braking zone was much shorter than the guy that drove in deep. His braking pressure was less because he didn't really have to slow the car down as much to make this happen. Because he's not deep in the corner with his tires all loaded up and jeopardized. He's going straight when he's braking. He's not cocked sideways or lateral to the racetrack while he's braking. So his braking zone's shorter. He got the car in the corner, he turned it in, got it up on the bars, and away he went. And this often is a much easier driving style. The car goes around the corner well. Even when the car's not set up well, the car will go around the corner well. Free roll steer is what you're going to experience as you accelerate. And for old timers, they're going to go, oh, my car's loose. And they're going to try to do something to overcome this while they're in the corner. But don't. You need to be the type of guy that accelerates when your car is loose, not brake. So accelerate through a loose right rear, not free roll steer. If you have free roll steer and you accelerate, you'll find that the car goes faster, the condition doesn't go away. So the tire's loaded up and it's carrying speed. Now at some point it's going to run out of load, or the speed's going to become greater than the load can handle, so it's going to lose the rear. And that's what you need to determine. But as you're carrying speed through sector 2, you're just going faster and faster, okay? And it'll feel good. It won't at first for you drive guys. It won't feel good. You won't like it, but you need to learn to like it. And you need to learn where the limits is, where you would spin it out. You need to learn where the limits is. Is speed better than drive? I believe it is. I believe it comes with less load to the car, less trials and tribulations, we can say, less problems that we have to overcome, less things the driver has to do to make the car stay hooked up. So yes, I think speed or momentum is better. Speed is going to take rebound. you're going to have rebound in the car. You're going to have spring rate. You're going to have ride height. So these things that we're currently doing to try to cheat the system that are giving us more problems than they are results all go away with momentum. It's better in the slick. It's probably not as fast as a hooked up racetrack, as putting it in there on the right rear and standing on the gas can be. When the track is fast, there's ways to get around the track, but we're talking about a normal, racetrack in the Midwest for a feature. It's going to be slick. Most tracks don't have moisture on them nowadays, but some might. But we're talking about slick track. So how can we learn to drive momentum? Okay, I think it's pretty easy to learn to drive. Just drive her in there, turn her, and accelerate off. And then hope your wheels don't spin. Momentum is going to take getting rid of habits for most of us. It's going to take a driving style. And here's how we normally do it. We get a practice day, or even when we're hot lapping, and we go down the straightaway about 3/4 speed. And then we brake, we turn in, get on the gas, and we accelerate through the corner. And accelerate through the corner as hard as you can, as the track will allow. And then come off exit, roll down the straightaway, and do whatever you have to do. Get to whatever speed you need to get that you can manage entry. Slow down, even if you have to slow down. And then put the car back on the bars, turn the car, and go through the corner. Okay, what this is going to require is finding the physical point of turn on both corners. So you need to get on Google Earth, look up the track that you race at, find those physical pointers, light pole, ute tire, where we pull in and off, where they park some, into fence, into billboards, grandstands in the outside the racetrack. Whatever it is, find the point of turn. You'll see where that point is. Okay, then go to the racetrack and identify it. Even if you got to get out there and walk it, find the point of turn. Okay, and then make sure that slightly after that, you're back on the throttle, car turn, and you start the acceleration problems. Start the acceleration process, not problem, but start that process. And carry the car through the corner, okay? Because what we're trying to do is get a rhythm. We're trying to get some muscle memory going. We're trying to get that physical mental picture in your head. We're trying to get that perfect pitch, that perfect swing, that perfect golf hit. Once you do that, you can replay that in your head. You can replay those laps in your head and go over and over and over. And when you do that, then your muscle memory will perform on the racetrack. And you can physically improve by practicing mentally. You can prove some of this stuff on local roads and streets. Now, I don't recommend that, and I may be the only person that does this, but every time I go around the corner, I break it down into sectors in my mind, and yeah, I don't know why, but I do, but that's just what I do. And I figure as a racer, you probably do it too. You can turn a corner on the street, and you can see that it's physically carrying more speed. If you want some timing devices, we sell a GPS timing device. Just get with me and I'll get you one. And this tells you if your speed on entry is fast enough. You can do overlays on the racetrack to see your theoretical best laps, to see your best lap versus your average lap, and see where your speed is. And then you can start working on increasing those speeds in sector 1 and sector 2. The first thing you need to do is you need to pick a discipline. What is it I'm going to do with my car? And what am I going to do with my racetrack? So you say, what class am I in? And we're going to say stock car, USRA stock car, IMCA stock car, sport mod, B mods, some IMCA A mods, some A mod classes that are different than a USMTS. Sometimes USMTS. Knowing when to drive momentum versus drive is important for them guys, okay? But your classification that you race in, hobby stock, is going to dictate whether you're going to do drive or momentum, okay? And in B mods, in 3-link cars, in factory 4-bar cars, stock cars, hobbies, these cars are going to pro stocks, pure stocks, factory stocks, street stocks. These cars are going to probably dictate that you drive momentum. They are, in that 450 to 550 horsepower 2-barrel classification. Okay, they're not going to be highly successful at making drive. They will have drive in them if you slow down enough, but when the good guys come, you'll get beat. So racetracks that dictate momentum, car or classifications that dictate momentum, your motor program. Maybe you can't afford to go out and spend 30 grand on a motor, so you decide to put a crate in, and that's legal. You get a weight break or whatever, but you're not going to compete on a drive level with these guys. You're going to have to run momentum because this is your discipline. This is what you've picked as your program. So you need to understand that. You need to identify that. The racetrack may make you do one or the other. You need to identify that. So you need to identify what it is that's going to dictate how you drive. And in most cases, momentum can be driven. In a few rare cases, it's going to have to be drive. But in these larger momentum cases, you need to practice your momentum. You need to go over it mentally in your head. You need to see that point of entry. You need to mimic that point of entry in your mind. Put the car up on the bars, turn the car, put the car up on the bars, and accelerate through the corner. Okay? Slow down going down the straightaway so you can do this. Many times the guys coming down the straightaway, they throw the flag, and this is exactly what happens. And that lap's good. So mimic these things, okay? But understand where your speed is. Your speed is on entry. It requires rebound. It requires spring rate. It requires ride height. And the cars can be really, really fast. So speed is why we need to improve our driving styles. You may have a highly successful driving style based on drive. It may win a lot of races. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. If that's working for you, then that is perfectly fine. Again, there is nothing wrong with that if it works. But if it don't work, because the racetrack won't allow it, the classifications won't allow it, your setup won't allow it, your shock program won't allow it, momentum will fix a lot of problems in a race car. But it isn't the easiest thing to come acquired to, and it is going to take practice, mentally, physical practice, and it is probably going to take time because most of us don't have a racetrack we can go practice on. So I appreciate you guys. This has been a tougher video because it's dealing with something that a lot of guys hold dear to their heart in their driving styles. It's hard because nobody really wants to be told how to drive, but we need to learn how to drive. We need to learn where the speed is. Find the problem and fix the problem. This is very important. So keep up, keep going, go fast, go left. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.